All right. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Christmas classic. We're fighting the forces of the opposites. So is Christmas Muktze or not? Okay, we're gonna try to put a little spice in the class today. First, we'll just start with the Dvar Torah, and it's some words of Rav Shlomo Leib of Lincha, who was a student of Menachem Mendel Ribbenov. And another aspect of Shabbos, I'll just read a few of the Hebrew words. He says, by the underlines, Kirei Noda Shelakadusha Shabbos Tzarich Tchila Achtus Bein Adas B'nai Yisrael. In order to have the holiness of Shabbos, you first need to unify the entire congregation of Israel. And he quotes the Zohar on that. And really, that is explicit, if you really notice, in the beginning of Parshas Vayakel, where it says, Vayakel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael. Moshe gathered the entire congregation of Israel. And meaning to say, what does it mean? He just gathered them? Not that it's just their bodies are together, but he got them to be unified together so that there shouldn't be any separation of hearts between one Jew and another. And after it says Vayakel, he gathered up the Jewish people. He says, Eila hadvarim asher anochi. This is what I'm commanding you to do. And then he teaches them about the mitzvah of Shabbos. So what's the idea of Vayakel, gathering them together and then giving them the mitzvah of Shabbos? And he says, this is what Hashem commanded. So the Hasidic Sforim say that Hashem not only commanded us in the Shabbos, but he commanded us to be unified with each other. And when we're unified as a whole, then we're able to bring in the Shabbos, because the whole idea of Shabbos is to bond with the oneness of Hashem. And if we're one with Hashem and every Jew is a portion of God on high, so then obviously every Jew has to bond with every Jew. Because if that's the time to bond with Hashem, and every Jew is a part of Hashem, so we need to bond with each other. The only way you really can access the Kiddush of Shabbos is to be unified with the other Jewish people. So this leads us to this week's Parsha, which is definitely one about unity. We all know in this week's Parsha, Yosef reveals himself to the brothers. After 22 years, they are reunited. The Torah goes through the very dramatic reuniting of Yaakov and Yosef together. They're crying and this and that. And then after that, what's the very first thing that Yosef says? So let's take a look at these two psukim. Vayomer Yosef elachav el beis aviv. And Yosef says to his brothers in the house of his father, I'm going to go up and I'm going to talk to Paro. I'm going to tell him what's going on. And I'll say to him, my brothers, the house of my father that lived in Canaan, they came to me. And then I'm going to tell them the following. And that the men are shepherds. Because they have cattle. And they brought all their cattle with them. So let's think about this. Yosef has 22 years to prepare what to tell his father and his brothers. And all he could say is that we're a bunch of shepherds. It's a little bit odd that should be what the Torah is recording, what Yosef is saying. Right after he meets his father, he's going, I'm going to tell Paro we're a bunch of shepherds. So the Vilna Gaon and many others say that if you really want to understand something in the Torah, what the root of something is, you have to see the first time we find a shepherd in the Torah. When we say that the patriarchs were shepherds, so what does it mean that they're shepherds? Okay. So when was the first time we find a shepherd in the Torah? Anybody know? What? Cain and Hevel. Cain and Hevel, right? Each one wanted to bring a korban to Hashem, a gift to Hashem. And what kind of gift were they giving? They were giving a korban that would reflect their essence. Because we know a korban, really, when you bring a korban, they say it's like to replace you. So therefore, when you're bringing a gift, you want to bring something that displays what your essence is. So let's think about this. Cain was a farmer. What is the farmer's daily routine? It's really a pretty lonely routine. You get up early in the morning before everybody else. You're alone in the field all day long. You return after a long, hard day at your home exhausted. You eat dinner, you go right to sleep, and you start to cycle over the next morning. That's what a farmer is, alone in the fields. So Cain thinks, what is it that naturally represents me? So he decides to bring an offering of flax and linen. That's what he really brought. That was the produce that he brought. It's interesting, in Hebrew, flax and linen is called in Hebrew bad, beis dalet. And it's called bad because each stem of linen grows bad bavad, individually and separately. That's how it works. So Cain felt that since he was alone all day, so flax and linen is the most appropriate item in the whole natural world to represent him, because he's lonely. He's alone. So he brought a korban that represented his loneliness. Hevel, on the other hand, and this is where we come to the shepherd now. He's a shepherd. A shepherd is never alone. He is always going from place to place. They never graze in the same place. He's with his sheep. He meets all sorts of different people along the way. And even when he's alone, he's still talking to the sheep. So Hevel felt that of all the creations, what would best represent him? It would be wool. Wool represents him the most because it's hundreds of fabrics that are intertwined and interwoven. So Hevel at his core was someone who was intertwined with his lots of people that he would meet throughout the day. That is what a shepherd's all about. Well, we know what happened at the end. Cain kills Hevel. Why? We could say, no, Cain was so used to being alone, he wasn't able to accept the fact that there's another person who's more wanted by Hashem than him, that Hevel's korban was taken. And that's why the Medrash says, the hint to why we're not allowed to wear shatnez, that's the combination of wool and linen, it's because of this problem, the story of Cain bringing the linen and Hevel bringing the wool. That's why we don't wear the shatnez, because that's what they brought. So that's where it started. Now let's fast forward a few years into history, many years, almost 2,000 years, to Sarah Imenu, our mother Sarah. She wakes up one day and tells Avram, throw Yishmael out of the house. So Avram doesn't understand, and Hashem has to intervene and say, you listen to what Sarah says. Well, many years later, Avram understood the wisdom of his wife. The Medrash says that when Avram had to give a eulogy for Sarah in the Eshes Chayil prayer, so there's the words that say, Dorsha Tzemer Pishtim. She knew how to decipher wool from linen. So what was that referring to? It was her vision of throwing Yishmael out of the house. She understood that Yitzchak and Yishmael could have another problem, like Cain and Hevel issue, before one kills the other. Let's separate him. So she had that wisdom. Well, let's fast forward a few more years. Now, Yosef was one of the greatest shepherds of the generation. He even taught his brothers. It says, he's shepherding with his brothers and the sheep. Well, they're dealing with sheep, yeah. And one day he has a dream. He says, I have a dream about what? About wheat in the field. So the brothers hear this and they think to themselves, you're a shepherd on the outside, but you're dreaming about the field at night. It must be at your core, you're really a farmer. And we've heard the story before. And it must be, this is another reincarnation of Cain and Hevel, Yishmael and Yitzchak. And, you're not going to be able to tolerate us because you're the man who likes to be alone if you're dreaming about the wheat. And by the things that he did, that they misunderstood, they felt that that's what's going to happen. So therefore, they said, we better kill you before you kill us. But Yehuda in the last minute intervened and said, wait a minute, our grandmother Sarah threw Yishmael out and didn't kill him. So let's just throw him out. You follow what's happening. So now let's fast forward a little bit more now. Now Yosef is meeting his family for the first time after 22 years. He has 22 years to prepare for this moment. What's the message he wants to tell his family? He looks at his whole family, he says, my dear brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, do you know why we're here in Mitzrayim now? Do you know why we're in the exile now? Because you thought we were shatnez. You thought we were a mixture of wool and linen. I'm going to tell Paro that we're all shepherds. We're all shepherds. And if we ever want to get back to Eretz Yisrael, we need to internalize the message of the shepherd. That's one of unity amongst ourselves. And that's what Yosef's saying. We have to work on unity. That's the idea of a shepherd. That's where the patriarchs were shepherds, this idea of unity. That's the only way we'll make it through the goals. So for a little variety, always it's good to have a little variety, guys. We're going to have, it's a 4.5 minute listen. What happened?
There's an old Hasidic ways to deal with darkness. You can sit, or you can ignite light in the darkness. Darkness is never expelled by cursing it or trying to chase it away with sticks or stones. It's light that dispels darkness. Here's a lovely story I heard by Naftali Reuven Kararech from Israel. He's the present Kosovo Vishnitzer Rebbe. He heard it from the original source. There was a large shul, a synagogue in Haifa in Israel that attracted many Jews who would come pray there on Shabbos and holidays. But right nearby, there was an Israeli Jew who kept his clothing store open on Shabbos. It attracted a lot of people, and it was extremely disrespectful and distasteful to the spirit of our holy day and to the environment right nearby, which was a great shul in Haifa. And the rabbi went to this Jew and he pleaded with him to close the store at least during the hours of services. But this Jew absolutely refused. I'm not religious. I'm a secular Jew. I don't believe in Shabbos. My store is going to remain open. And in desperation, the rabbi came to a Hasidic master in Haifa. He was known as the Seret Vishnitzer Rebbe, Rabbi Baruch Hager. He was born in 1895, passed away in 1963. He says, Rebbe, what am I supposed to do with this person? It's so uncomfortable for our shul, it's so uncomfortable for the Jews. It's such a desecration of Shabbos. And the Secretary Rebbe looks at him and says, I want to ask you a question. Do you love this Jew who keeps his store open on Shabbos? How can I love him when he spits in the face of our community every single Shabbos? How can I love him when he shows such disdain to our religion and our heritage and our people? How can I love him when he is so disrespectful to our entire community? No, I don't love him.
That's not supposed to be happening. Okay.
How do you know that it's because he violates the Shabbos that you don't love him? Maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe it's because he feels that you don't love him that he violates the Shabbos. Maybe his disrespect for Shabbos is a reciprocal response to your inner animosity towards him. It's not what the rabbi expected to hear. He says to Rebbe, so what should I do? He says, start loving him. But I don't. So start. How do I start? Well, sometimes you have to begin with the words, but they have to be genuine. Next Shabbos, on your way to shul, go into the store. It's true that you love him. The rabbi was very hesitant, but to his credit, he did it. The next Shabbos morning, he walks into the store, and this Jew sees him and tells him, as a good Israeli, "Ta'uf mikan! Get out of here! I'm not closing the store for Shabbos. Forget about it. Go out." The rabbi looks at him and says, "No, no, no, no. I came here for one reason, to tell you, Sha'ani ohev otcha. I love you." He looked at him.
Like, are you crazy? That's what he says. No.
I love you. He says, "Why do you love me?" He says, "I love you because you're my brother. You are a Jew. I am a Jew. We are both children of God. I love you because I know that you have a holy and great, gigantic soul. And I want to give you a hug." And the Jew melted. Peace. And the rabbi went to shul. And the next Shabbos morning, he did the same. Every morning he would come into the store, give the Jew a hug, and tell him, "I love you." 6 months later, the store was closed for Shabbos. You see, the rabbi could have easily concluded that loathing him is surely justified and righteous. In his mind, it would have been self-righteous and holy. Might have never entertained the idea that his hate was not the result, but the cause of the problem. I wish every one of us, and Jew in America, and in Israel, and in the rest of the world, knew this. What we could accomplish through truly loving other people is incredible. Happy Hanukkah.
Okay. Why is it not letting me close it? Okay, okay, that was a little entertainment. Okay, so that's the point. The point is that's the power of Shabbos. If we want to have the right power of Shabbos, we have to have that achdus between ourselves. Like Yosef was the shepherd, and saying we're all shepherds, we all do things together. So that's how we're able to really bring in and access what the Shabbos is about. Okay, that's the Dvar Torah. Now we move on in the laws of Muktze, and I decided to just, make things a little bit more colorful today. Now that I got the big screen and everybody's in the room and the people in Zoom land are able to see all this. So let's start with our cases, our scenarios, have some discussion on these scenarios, what we feel, and then we'll go through the sources and come to halacha. So here's the first case. Okay, you're awoken on Shabbos morning by the sound of loud shrieks. That's the best sneeze picture I could find. With the loud shrieks. The small doors of your wife's standing jewelry box fell off. Is the box? And I couldn't find a picture with the doors broken. I just couldn't find it. Okay, is the box and or the doors Muktze on Shabbos? Okay, now, any thoughts, any ideas? Remember what we talked about last week about the broken shards? Remember broken shards, if they have some use, whatever, to start us off. Why would you think it's Muktze? Why would it not? Can you move the box? Can you move the doors that are broken off it? Yes, no, why? Anybody have any thoughts on the matter? Let's first of all say, why should it be Muktze? What reasons could you think that it should be Muktze?
Gufa.
What?
It's now like a piece of timber. It has no purpose. Though I think it's a utensil, frankly.
Okay, one second. I'm not sure what you're saying.
It
sounds like you're speaking from both sides of your tongue.
I am speaking from both sides, but I'm citing that was a utensil at the beginning of Shabbos. It broke. It's still albeit a broken utensil, but it could store other things.
Okay. So you're saying it's a broken utensil, it could store other things,
or keep
even
them.
though it doesn't have a door in it.
That's right.
Doesn't have a door in it. What about the door? Is the door Muktze?
Hmm.
Okay, you can think about that, Jay.
Well, the
And the Zoom crowd, you can jump in whenever you want.
It's a device that's normally used on Shabbos. A woman
It's-
wants to get her jewelry on before she comes to shul or get dressed for Shabbos.
But it's not a door
Yeah,
anymore.
it's a device that a woman uses for Shabbos to get her jewelry, yes.
It does have a purpose because it can still protect
Mm.
the jewelry that's there or keep it in place if, or keeping it at arm's, length from a cat that might wonder why or your kids from going in it. It still may have a purpose. I'm going on a bit of a limb here, but I think that there could be an argument that it's not.
It could be something, so, although you'd never buy one that way.
No.
And the
This
woman
is
would be
good.
happy to have the utensil, the jewelry in there.
Yeah.
Not afraid anybody would steal it on Shabbos, huh?
It's not, but is it,
We're just keep it in place. Keep
it's
it-
a lock?
And what about the doors?
The door is Muktze.
The door is Muktze. Why would the door be Muktze?
It has no
Because
purpose.
it doesn't have
whatsoever.
any value, you can't do anything with it.
It has no purpose at all.
What? If it has hooks on it?
Unless you are saying that it can be used to cover something.
Okay, didn't we say, what did we say about broken mug?
Cover
Can cover a
The
pin.
mug you can use, yeah, because the mug is still. can be used as
Okay, so the
utensil.
question is, like, let's say if this door just came off like that, do you have a use for that door? Would you be able to use it for something?
Or
You
what?
can use it as a show.
Okay,
tray, it's a
Louis,
tray.
Lewis or Russell,
It's a
you wanna
tray.
say
There you go.
something?
It's a tray.
Shh.
I say
Yeah,
you can
you-
use it. I
I'm
say it's
sorry?
because you can use it for something. So therefore, like the shard, it should not be, it should be able to be used.
Okay,
You can-
so you're saying she'll be able to use, is she gonna wanna use that nice door for something so mundane?
There's a mirror.
Yeah.
Well, I know that one's got a mirror, but let's say right here, this door, right over here, this door.
You can use it to serve something what she likes, so she not get frustrated. I don't know why this is.
Use it
not
as a fan.
Okay, Russell, you got anything to say?
Is there a possibility of the door being reattached after Shabbos?
Is there a possibility of the door being reattached after Shabbos? Of course.
Are you allowed to think
Then
like
it's not Muktze,
Then it's not Muktze. Why?
because it's still, it's, if
Part of what it is.
the box with the door is not Muktze, the fact that the door is fallen off but can be reattached after Shabbos, I would say it's not Muktze.
Okay, interesting. But if it could be reattached after Shabbos, might you be tempted to attach it on Shabbos?
You should not.
then
Right?
that would be
Maybe
Muktze.
you'd be tempted to attach it on Shabbos.
Yeah.
It'll be-
Okay, so that might be something to consider. Okay, anybody have, yes, now a Victor, now that everybody said, now we're gonna hear the wise. Now that everybody felt, like a Victor, when there's a Sanhedrin, 71 on Sanhedrin, and the gadol of the Sanhedrin, he's not allowed to speak first. Because if he speaks first, nobody wants to speak. So you're the gadol of the Sanhedrin. So now we want to hear what you have to say.
Reattach it if it's like melacha. In order, if you want to fix it, it's.
Okay, so Victor is saying through the mask and all the way here that it depends how easily it can be reattached. Is it just a question of just putting it on, or you gotta bang it in? Okay, what would be the difference?
If it's, if it involves melacha.
So Victor's saying if it would involve a malacha, then you'd say it would be muktzah.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't involve a malacha, it wouldn't be muktzah. That's what Victor's saying. Okay, good. Anybody else to comment on this? Okay, let's move. Yeah, go ahead.
The rabbis may have made it Muktze just because the possibility of reattaching it.
Okay,
Reattaching it, Muktze, or fixing it.
okay. So Larry's saying the rabbis may have made it muktzah because you may be tempted to fix it, as opposed to a shard, a broken mug. You ain't ever gonna fix it. Okay. Good discussion. So let's move on. This is like this guy. These cases are. This is like one day of mishaps. Okay, so you wake up Shabbos morning, your wife is screaming, and you didn't go to the class. You don't know what to tell her about the door. Okay, after being abruptly woken up, you finally make it to shul and sit down on one of the benches. As you sit down, one of the legs break and you land on the floor. Are you allowed to lift the broken bench and place it atop of another bench in order to sit down on it?
No,
Why? Yes, no, and why?
no, because if you're putting it back then as if you're doing some work, like you're putting it, you're attaching things,
You're not attaching.
you're building
no,
something back.
It's not permanent. It's not permanent.
You're
It's
just
not like an
putting it
umbrella.
up and putting it on another bench.
It's like building something, right?
Are you?
Putting one piece of wood on another,
It's
is
not-
that
it's
called
not-
building?
It's not permanent. It's not permanent.
You're just picking up the bench. You're allowed to lift up the broken bench and put it on top of another bench in order to sit down on it.
It's not permanent. It's, if it was permanent, then that would be a malacha.
Yeah, because here's it, you got a future use for it. You got another
Future-
use for it.
Discussion as 2 weeks ago, last week.
Is it?
The broken what?
If it has, if it still has a use, if you can still use it as it is.
And you can, then it's not muktzah.
So you're saying if there's a use for it, it's not muktze,
You can stack chairs, right?
right? What about the broken leg?
Stack chairs. Not to-
Well, yeah, obviously, if it's in the way to make danger for somebody,
Yeah.
there's nothing to talk about.
Well-
You would be able to move it out of the
So is a
way.
broken bench the danger? Because then you could say that
Well,
without.
yeah, if
muktzah.
it's, okay, let's assume there is no danger.
Okay.
Let's assume there is no danger. Can you pick it up or not? So you guys are saying that you could pick it up because you're feeling that it's no different than the shard
Uh,
and you're having a use for it. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. You finally sit down and notice that the button on your jacket fell off when you fell to the ground. Are you allowed to pick up the button?
mm.
Oh, I didn't give you permission to show me.
Are you allowed to pick up the button? Are you allowed to pick up the button?
Hmm.
Well, the jacket is.
Well, is the jacket Muktze?
No. Ja-
The jacket's not Muktze, is it?
It's clothing.
No,
It's clothing. You can wear the clothing without even that shirt. You could wear it.
But the button is clothing too.
Button is clothing too.
Yes, that's,
Well,
it's
part of
by
the
its
clothing, right?
designation, a button is only one thing. It's for clothing.
Okay, but does that button clothe you?
Anyways, we're.
Okay, yeah, what use could you have for it now?
Put another piece of clothing.
What? Put it on another piece of clothing on Shabbos?
you can fix it back, right?
Okay, but can I do that on Shabbos?
No.
The only way I could do it is to sew it back on. It has no use otherwise, right? So would the button be Muktze or not? Do I have a possible use with this button? Something you could do with it?
Toys for the kids.
Tiddlywinks,
Yeah.
you know? Yes,
You can
Shlomo,
On a page of your sitter to mark your spot.
1 second. Sid's trying to get in here. Yes, Sid, pick up your volume.
I tried. You can put it in your sitter to mark your spot.
Oh, the book.
Okay, Sid's saying you put it in your sitter to mark your spot.
Bookmark.
Okay, that's an interesting, I never thought of that. It'll be a stretch, it'll be a stretch. Okay, that's a possibility. Okay, yes, Shlomo?
I think it's like a closure, like a cap closure, it's a closure to the shirt. So if you are able to open the cap of a bottle or wine.
You want to say it's like a cap, like on top of a bottle?
Yeah, it's like a closure to the shirt.
I know, but isn't it a little
No,
different that when
no.
you're closing a cap, you don't have to do a
It's
malacha?
broken. It's broken.
But here to put the button in, you're obviously doing some kind of malacha, no?
It's like the handle of the vanity cabinet. It's broken.
Right now, isn't it pretty much like a pebble? Does it have any kind of a use?
Is it different if the button is broken versus in its whole?
Is it different if the button is broken versus a whole button?
Good question.
No, broken
Good
button
question.
would be something-
Well, if it's broken, you're certainly not going to sew it back on. But then again, if it's broken, what are you going to do with it?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Goofa.
So then it will be Muktze.
If it's broken, yes.
Okay, what if all the buttons of your shirt came off?
Go home.
It's the yes.
All the buttons of your shirt came
You
off.
shouldn't have been wearing the shotness when you ripped it
Would
off.
the shirt, would the shirt be Muktze or not?
This was 2 months.
Could you wear that or not? Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next part of the story. Okay, so it's been a rough morning so far, huh? Davening seems to be taking extra long this Shabbos. You check the time on your watch and notice it stopped working at 6 a.m. Are you allowed to continue wearing the watch or do you need to remove it?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Okay,
No, who wears? Just
So
like
you
clothing.
wore it. You
okay, the
already wore
watch is not working. See this watch here? It's not working.
But the watch,
Can you wear the watch?
Yes.
No.
yes.
Okay.
Like
So
the
you
keys.
already wore the
Yes,
watch, right?
why can you wear the watch?
It's like the keys of your cars.
One second. Why can you wear the watch?
Because you had worn it earlier,
One
right?
second, Jay.
I mean, the watch has dual function. One is to tell time, another part of it could be like, it's like jewelry or a piece of clothing. So-
Okay, does this watch look like jewelry to you?
Yeah.
Well, if
Cheap
it's
jewelry,
if it's a malaka keys, then
I
what are
don't
you
know.
wearing
Does,
for it?
does it look like solid gold to you? I don't know.
But you would.
It's a white gold.
So wait a minute. If it's valuable and it stops working, then. it
What if
becomes
it's a
malaka keys.
$35 Timex?
So.
It's
still-
a toothpick.
still accessory.
An accessory?
Yeah, I mean, you wear a
Would
watch.
you wear that to a fancy wedding?
I don't have any fancy watches.
That's the accountant in you talking. Okay, I mean, there are people, my son was involved with certain business deals, and when the businessmen are happy with very good deals, they give their colleagues, watches that are $30,000, right?
Wow.
So there's that's jewelry there, right? So the question is, how is this watch of any function if it can't tell time? If you had a watch that couldn't tell time, would you wear it? I'm going to this wedding and I'm wearing a $35 watch, so it looks really great. All right. I mean, I understand if it's a gold watch, then that's a piece of jewelry. This doesn't seem to be a piece of jewelry.
But if you already worn it, you will not be taking it out.
Okay, so now the question is, it's on your wrist.
No, it's already on my wrist.
Yeah, once in the hand, no problem.
Yeah,
Same
no
rule
problem.
applies.
Okay, so what kind of carrying are you doing?
You're allowed to throw it out.
No, you know, as long as it's in your hand, you're fine. The moment you put it down, you're not
Okay.
fine.
Okay, you can't put it down unless you take it off.
That's right. So you don't take it off.
So here's the question. Should you be obligated to walk over to your
Garbage.
bedroom or whatever and take off the watch? Or wear it the whole shots? Now, obviously, are you really carrying it? Are you moving it like moving Muktze is not allowed?
No, it's like clothing.
It's like doing it from the side. It's like carrying it in an indirect way. Is there any advantage to taking it off sooner than later?
You're creating a Muktze situation, where depending where you put it now.
Well, if it's Muktze, you'd like to get rid of the
Well,
Muktze
yeah.
as soon as
But
possible.
it will
no?
be Muktze if you take it off
But who says? But isn't it Muktze while it's on your hand?
No, because you said the
It's-
last proof was that you had the shards, the wrappers or whatever. As long as it was in your hand, right, you're fine. If you put
But
it
you're
in the
not
car-
going to hold on to it all day
You
long.
are. It's attached to your wrist.
So just take it off. Just take it off. You can take it off, can't you? Or maybe taking it off is now moving it.
But there's no reason to take it off.
There's no reason to take it off. and you
Well,
wouldn't
it's
take
not telling time.
it- well,
It's not telling time.
Obviously, you ignore it.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Okay, your epic Shabbos morning continues. In the middle of davening, you go to use the restrooms. As you open the door to the bathroom, you disconnect the handle from the door. Hold it off it. Hey. Are you allowed to put the handle back into the door? I was lucky on that picture. Can you just put it back into the door? See, just put it back into the door. Yes, no, and why?
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
because it is like safety, like, you
No, no.
people cannot get in and get out.
No, it's not safety.
you
It's
have to
decent.
do
It's
that.
It's not,
decency.
it's not safety. I don't think it's a safe, let's say,
Because
let's say
somebody's
it's,
inside, somebody's inside, it's
Yeah,
stuck
yeah.
inside.
no, you could open it without a handle.
How can you open it without
You
a
could
handle?
open it with difficulty without a handle, couldn't you?
I don't know, maybe. it is-
Let's say it's not a safety issue. Let's say, you could just put let's say it's right there. It's not closed, see?
Oh, the door is open.
The door is open, you pull the handle out. So now, A is the handle Muktze, B is the door Muktze, C, can you put the handle back on the door?
If you can do it easily.
Well, if you can put it easily, even, so you seem to feel if it's easy, that's not called repairing, is it?
If Israeli, it's not.
Okay, well, how do you define easy and not easy,
Power tools.
right?
Power.
No labor, no
Okay,
labor.
or make, does this have any other use besides, okay, let's say you can't put it in easily. Let's say you can't put it in easily.
You use the whole-
Now what do you do with it? What you do with it right now? Right now, the guy's hand is holding it. And he broke it off. It's not something that can be reinserted.
You're gonna keep it in your hand, that's for sure.
Then keep it at the side.
You
Just
can
go to the
throw,
side.
you can keep it.
Does it have any use?
No,
You can hold the door open.
door stop, door stop. It can be used as a door stop.
Be used as a door stop.
Yes, it can be used as a door stop. Everything can be used as a
Okay.
door stop.
Let's go on. Let's go on.
And to bookmark, Sid. And to
Okay.
bookmark.
Okay, anyway, somehow you got out of the bathroom. There's a very special kiddush this Shabbos with 4 different types of kugel, 3 different types, this is pre-COVID, Shulin. Everyone runs out of shul to go to the kiddush, like the good old days. Ah! As your friend runs by you, he knocks off your glasses. The temple handle breaks off from the frame. Are the pieces Muktze? What if only the lens pops out?
Oh, wow, that's happened to me.
What happens? Okay, look at this guy's glasses, man. The whole thing got warped out of crazy, right? So now he breaks the handle off. Is the handle Muktze? Are the glasses Muktze? The lens pops out. It just Muktze. The whole thing's Muktze. So the guy can't,
The frame, the frame you can't reattach, the frame you can't reattach. So
you can't reattach the frame. Can you wear the rest of the glasses?
Yeah,
the
it's
rest
still
of the
half the
glasses,
glasses.
if you can wear them, you can
That's
wear
how
them.
he's wearing
You can
it.
try and wear
Okay.
them on, but
So
the
now,
lens that popped out and the one side that popped out.
what, now if the lens,
Maybe the lens you can reattach easily.
If you need them to leave.
okay,
Yeah.
maybe you can use it as a monocle.
No.
Or
Or,
you can use it
just
the way he's put it.
Put the lens like that,
or you could burn
Like-
ants with it.
Yeah, the way he has put it.
like Colonel Klink, right?
You can put the glasses the way he has put it, like on one thing.
Okay.
Easily, because you use it for reading.
On the inside, the R identifies the manufacturer and the model number. So if you need to replace that arm and get it reattached, you may need that piece as a reference.
Okay, do you need it on Shabbos?
No, you can't do it. You can't do it on
Do you
Shabbat.
need it on Shabbos?
By the way, Jim,
You're in shul now. You're in shul. You're not in your house.
all glasses.
And
are
there's like
manufactured in the
300
same
people
factory.
walking around, dropping
brand,
cholent
every
all
single
over the
one.
place.
So they
Kids
put
going
that in it.
around throwing cholent all over the place. And now you got the frame, the hand, that piece there, and what are you gonna do with it? Or it fell on the floor.
You have, you gotta rescue your glasses. Oh, wait a
Okay,
minute.
what if it's a lens? That the lens itself costs $250.
Oh, shoot, Keith, you can't touch it. You can't touch it. It's valuable.
Okay, so what are we gonna do with this? It's good question, huh? I know, get contacts, right? Okay, one last case. Okay, you're ready to go back home with your family and relax. On the way home, the wheel from the stroller flies off.
Oh, gosh, that's happened.
Are the stroller and its wheel Muktze? I'm sure everyone with kids has had this
Every-
happen once in their lives. And sometimes it happens on Shabbat. Okay, now, the wheel is just exactly the way you see the case there. The wheel fell off. So is the wheel Muktze? Is the stroller Muktze? If the stroller, can you use the stroller? Let's say,
You can still push the stroller.
Could still push the stroller, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna just leave the baby in the street and say, sorry.
Yeah, Muktze.
It's Muktze,
Be a man, crawl though.
right? So you pick up the baby and you leave the stroller in the street. Can you move the stroller? Right? Would you plan on fixing it after Shabbos?
Yeah.
It depends.
Can you make it wait?
That's if the wheel fell off. What if the wheel just was destroyed? Or what if, let's say, one of the pieces over here breaks?
But wait a minute, if it's not a permanent repair, because I've had that experience where basically something happened to the wheel, but the wheel was it was gonna come off regardless. It wasn't a kind of thing. And I just figured that stroller, like we had four kids, and the stroller was busted. Like we couldn't carry these kids.
Okay, so what if you could just pop the wheel back on?
But it's not a permanent repair. If it's a permanent repair,
You
then
could pop the wheel back on and just stroll it slowly. Could you do that? Okay, these are all the questions, guys. If we could answer them all by 9:15, that would be amazing. Okay, so let's close this down. And let's bring up the sources. And we're going to start with, can you see the source sheets? Yeah? Okay, we're on source number 62. Now, I don't know if I'm printed out for you, Dad. I don't recall. But I figure if we're looking at together on the screen, it'll work a little bit better.
59, Rabbi.
Okay, but it's right. So we could just look.
Hold on.
Maybe I gave you, could be I gave you last week, but we're gonna get past them for sure. Okay, so let's pick it up and let's look at this Gemara in Shabbos, source number 62. Okay, Amar Abaye. Abaye talks about Kol HaKelim Nitlim b'Shabbos. All utensils can be carried on Shabbos. Vidal Soseyam Imam, and their doors together with them. Afapi Shenisparku Bachol Nitlim b'Shabbos. Even the door broke off of it during the weekday, you could carry it on Shabbos. That's what Abai says. Then they bring a Bryce, a Tanur Rabban, and Dela Shel Shita V'Shel Teva Shel Migdal, a door of, let's say, a dresser or like a small mini closet or something. No clean. You could take it off on Shabbos. Avalo Machsirin, but you can't put it back on. We'll just read right now. V'Shalul Shel Tarek Gedolim. What about a door of a chicken coop? Lo no clean v'lo machsirin. You can't take it off and you can't put it back on. And the Gemara wants to know what's going on. Maya v'lo machsirin. Why can't you put it back? He's going back to the case with the door. The cases before where the doors, even though they came off, they could be carried on Shabbos, right? And you could carry them, you could take them off, but you can't return them. So Rava says, Chaver ain't binyan bekelim. There's no such concept as building with utensils. They ain't stira bekelim, and there's no concept of destroying in vessels. But uxera, but there's a decree, shema yitaka. Maybe you will stick it in forceful. So let's unpack this little bit of Gemara and explain some of the ideas that are coming out over here. The Shulchan Aruch rule, there is one of the 39 prohibited activities is building. You cannot build on Shabbos. You cannot destroy on Shabbos. Those are two activities. Now, clearly, that applies to a house, anything that's connected to the ground. That's for sure building. Putting one brick on top of another is building. Taking the bricks off is destroying. That's the biblical prohibition. You can't build, you can't destroy.
Lego is bad.
What?
Lego is
We're not getting to Lego. Let's not get distracted. Let's try to stay focused. We got 7 cases to get through without dealing with Lego now. Okay, what about building or destroying utensils? So there's no real, we hold ain binyan bekalim. There's no problem of building, so to speak, utensils per se, okay? And there's no problem of destroying. In other words, if something's connected to the ground, like a chicken coop, then that's considered building. If something's not connected, then it's not, okay? And therefore there'd be situations where it's not really technically a problem. However, and therefore that's what's being said over here. If, so let's say you have the utensil, let's say our jewelry box, right? And it has a door. So since you, more is saying, since you plan to return the door after Shabbos, and the door was originally connected to that utensil, so the door never loses its status of a utensil, even if it has no other purpose, as we learned by the shards, exactly as we learned by the shards. Because since you plan on using it again, you plan on putting it back, and that's what it means, afal pisha nislarku. Even though they came apart, you can put the doors back. But when we're talking about, let's say, a door of a window of a window of a house, even if it has another use at the Yatz of Shabbos, it's not a utensil because it's really considered part of the house. The door to the house is considered part of the house. It's not really a utensil per se, all right? So then the Gemara is saying that even though you're allowed to remove the door from a portable closet, because it's not really, there's no destruction with utensils, but you can't return it. Why? Because maybe you're gonna really stick it in very forcefully. And when you stick it in forcefully, it would have a different prohibition, that building, but what we call makeb patish, you're finishing it off. So therefore, it's coming out like that. So the Shulchan are saying you're allowed to remove the doors of a portable closet. That's only if the doors are not securely fastened to the closet. If it's really going to be very hard to pull them out very much, then that would even be a form of destruction as well. Okay. And even if you're allowed to remove the doors, you can't return them forcefully. Okay. And that's why, and therefore the case with the chicken coop you can't do, because the chicken coop's connected to the ground. So that's really considered like a building. And therefore there's a problem of building with that. So let's summarize what we just said. Where is it? Here's the summary. Point one, if a door breaks off a kli, the door is not muktze. If you plan to eventually return it to the original kli, because it never loses its status of a kli. Therefore, even if I have no other use for it, but that's the thing with the shard. This really has a use, because after Shabbos, you're going to put it back. We're not afraid that you're going to do it on Shabbos. Now, and it goes without saying that the utensil itself can be moved on Shabbos, and it's not muktze, even though it's missing the door, because it's very usable. And also, you're even allowed to remove the doors, let's say, of the jewelry box, if they're not secured tightly. It doesn't require a lot of effort. Since it's a utensil, you're just taking it off. It's not a big deal. But returning it is not allowed, lest you forcefully fasten the door back to the kli. Okay? So that's the first thing that we realize over here. So which question can we answer right away? Our very first question. The wife wakes up screaming because the jewelry box is broken. So what's the answer to the question now?
No problem.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. The jewelry box can be moved. The door can be moved because it definitely is a utensil, right? We're not worried you're going to stick it back on. However, can you put it back on?
No.
Well, it depends. If it's just a question of like a little latch and just putting the latch on, and it doesn't involve any type of work at all, you could put it back on. But if it involves pushing and thising and that, for sure you cannot do that. Okay, so we've answered the first question. Good, clear? Now, let's continue with the sources, and let's go get to our bench. Let's look at source number 64. Oh, what happened to 63? 1 second. What happened to 63? Okay. Yeah, let's take a look at 63. I jumped the gun a little bit. Okay, that's fine. Everybody explained it outside, we don't have to do it. Okay, let's go to 64. Okay, now we're gonna talk about something much bigger, a stove. Kira shenishmata achas miyachosel, a stove that one of its legs falls off. Mutter letaltalo, you can carry it. Shtayim aser, two you can't. Rav says, and this is how we're gonna hold like, afilu chad nami osur, even one you can't what? You can't carry the stove. Why? Gzera shema yitaka. Now for this, we make the decree that maybe you are going to forcefully fix it. Okay? Because I guess the stove is more important than a closet. Okay? And if you're going to be moving the stove, there's a greater likelihood that you're going to fix this. And that's how the Shulchan Aruch rules. And the Ramah says that the same applies to a bench.
Wow.
Where one of the legs falls off. You're not allowed to move the bench lest you put the leg back in. Okay? Therefore, he says, you're not allowed to place the bench with the missing leg on another fixed bench in order to use it. You can't use it. Because here, and we'll see in a minute what the svar is going to be to make the difference of that. Okay. Then there's a whole discussion after that. What about the leg? So here in the Sefer Shulchan Shulchan 65, he says he's not really sure. What about moving the leg of this stove? If you plan on returning it back.
No problem.
So maybe it shouldn't be a problem. Maybe it's no different than the door to the jewelry box. Do we say the dumya ladela shel sheda? Is it like the door of that box that it's allowed? Or maybe it's different. And what's the difference? Kivan the hekera asura betilto. Because maybe here it's different, that the stove can't be carried at all. So maybe the leg can't be carried either.
Oh.
And that's what you see in 66. 66 says this very clearly over here. He says, what's the difference between the jewelry box and the bench? And he asks, what do you see? How come by the jewelry box, we're not worried about you fixing it? While the stove we are. The answer is, can you think of the answer? He says, the Bechia Gav in this case, you can use the jewelry box as is. Since the jewelry box still works, it just doesn't have a door. So if the jewelry box works, why would I be inclined to fix it on Shabbos? It works anyway, right? Therefore, we're not going to make the decree. Masha'ekin b'kira, but with a stove, the safsel, or the bench in Ishma that breaks, well, I can't use it unless I fix it. It can't be carried at all. So once I'm going to start to carry it, then I could very well likely be moving it. See, that's the difference. If there's no functionality to it, so what am I? A broken stove, you can't do much with it. And if I'm going to start carrying the stove, and if I'm going to start carrying the leg, I may come and fix that. So therefore, that's why we would be prohibited in that. Okay, that's clear? So now let's look at the summary on that point. The halachic conclusion is, if a part of a kli breaks off on Shabbos, that piece of muktze is not muktze if you intend to reattach it to the original kli, but only if that original kli in its current state is usable. Okay? However, if the original kli is not usable in its current state, you're not allowed to move the kli or the broken piece lest you fix it on Shabbos in the case of the bench. Okay, so now we've come to the second case of our bench that the leg falls off. So therefore, according to Shulchan Aruch, the bench is muktze because you have no use for it. You can't move it because we're afraid you might forcefully fix it. And the other opinions are telling us not only the bench, but the leg could also be muktze. Okay. Now, they do mention something fascinating. If the repair would be a major repair, like way beyond your skill set, then the bench is not muktze because there's no likelihood you're going to fix it. So this becomes the point.
Whoa.
This becomes the point. On the one hand, well, maybe I could use the bench for something. Remember, it's not no worse than a broken shard. I can use it for something, yeah, but if it's a broken bench, you're probably going to want to use it to fix it. There's a broken mug, you're not going to fix it. The jewelry box, you don't need to fix it. It works even without the door, so you don't have to worry about it. And even the door, after Shabbos, you'll put it in. But if you're talking about a broken stove, a broken bench, well, what can you use it for? Well, the only way I could use it if I fix it. So I don't want you to use it. And the thing that will fix it will be the leg or whatever. So therefore, it makes sense to say that it is muktze. Okay, good. So now we've answered the first two questions. Clear, you see the differences over here. If it's something that you can use the main thing that's broken, it's not muktze and the door isn't muktze. If you can't use the main thing, and the only way you could use it is you'd fix it, we'd be concerned about you fixing it, then you could not fix it.
So,
Okay.
So, but the exception was that if there's no hope of you fixing it, then it's not muktzah. It's not
Well,
muktzah.
Because you can use it anyway. That's the point.
Okay,
If
so
I
then-
could use it anyway, why do I need to fix it?
Okay,
The jewelry box, can it hold jewelry? Yes. So why would I fix it on Shabbos?
sorry.
So I'll wait till after Shabbos. So therefore the jewelry box and the door is fine, right? But if it's a stove or a bench where the only way I could use it is if I fix it. There really is, and those are major items that you need. So therefore it's muktze because I might fix it. And therefore I couldn't take the leg because I might fix it. But if it's such a big, hard job, then it's good, you need a professional, this and that. For that thing, I'm going to do a whole Shabbos on that. A little thing, yeah, okay. But Shabbos, no, I'm not going to do it. So that becomes the criteria. All right, I think that's pretty
So
clear.
That criteria, it's still muktzah if you require a big job.
No, if a big job would not be muktze, because then you're not going to repair it. If it's something that you could fix, then it's a problem. But if it's something that's so let's say the bench broke in half. The bench, not a leg, but the bench broke in half. Oh man, you're gonna have to do major repairs on this. So you're not gonna do that on Shabbos. We don't have to be concerned about that. And if you have some use for this bench, you could use it. If you have some use for the bench, some use for the leg. Now, obviously, if it's a hazard, you can for sure move it away. If it's a hazard, for sure move it away. Okay, good. Let's move on now.
Button, jacket.
Now we've got all the fundamentals. Now things can roll pretty quickly over here. So let's move on to the buttons. Okay, and that's going to be source 67 is the buttons. And here we're going to have a number of opinions. We're going to start with Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, is quoted in Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa. Now we know a little bit. What would we compare the button to? Would we compare it to the jewelry case or the bench?
Or a needle.
Okay, you got a jacket with a button. You've got a jewelry box with a door, and you've got a bench with a leg. Okay, so let's see what we have over here. So let's see what Rav Auerbach says. Kaftor atzmo, the button itself, kishenofa, when it falls. Mutor letaltalo, you may carry it.
Yay.
Vebo mishum muktze, there's no issue of muktze. And why is there no issue of muktze? Let's see at the bottom footnote. That's what he's quoting Rav Auerbach. Because it's like the door that fell off of the jewelry box. How is it any different? You're planning on putting the button on after Shabbos. You can wear the jacket without the button. It's not as good, but you can wear it, right? And the button is like the doors of the utensils. They both are available to be carried because of the main part Below tummy ladals is a bison. It's not like the doors of a house, right? There's no, it's not like considered like a stone. It's not like a house. So therefore, he's saying, according to the letter of the law, you could. However, he then adds, there's always that little add. Better to be strict. Because right now, the button has no use. Now, there are some early rabbis who say that the door of a portable closet is only not muktze if it has another use. See, that was an opinion we didn't bring out, but there is an opinion, not necessarily we hold like, but they're saying if you have no use for it now, maybe it is muktze. That's not everybody's opinion. So if you want to satisfy that opinion, better not to carry it. But he's really saying, according to the letter of the law, you could carry it. There's no reason why you couldn't. It'd be nice to be strict. Okay, now let's look at what Rav Moshe Feinstein has to say about buttons. He's on the other extreme.
Wow.
Kol kaftarim havale muktzah. All buttons are muktzah. Why? Because the eina derech bisman hazel otzur al pitzlucha kapaftar. We wouldn't even use it to cover a bottom cap. Below dummy ledin delicious work, and it's not like the door of the jewelry box. The bedelas eslei lahadelas ezatashmish, because the door still has some use. The door has some use. You could do something with the door of the jewelry box, but not the button. And therefore, we would suggest it's muktzah. But then at the end, he says, if you do have some use for the button, then it's not muktzah. So if you got your kid, and your kid wants to play, I don't remember if you were a kid.
We collected buttons.
You take two buttons, you push one and tiddlywinks.
People
Or,
collect buttons.
or you flick it with your finger, You can play all kinds of games with buttons, depending. So therefore, it would come out from these opinions that if you really have a certain use for the button, now remember, if let's say the button, if let's say you're buttoning your shirt, yeah, and as you have it's in your hand, breaks off, you can for sure put it away. But if it's on the ground, according to these opinions, unless you have a use for it, it should be muktzah. But what do you do? That's a really nice button. You know what happens when buttons fall off? You never put them back, right? But if you lose it, you for sure not putting them back. So what would you do? What could you do though? Was this at the Kiddush? No, when did the button? This in Shul, right? It pops off and it's on the floor now. So what do you do now?
Ask a kid to pick it up.
The only thing you could do is you could kick it. You could kick it into the corner. You could for sure kick it into the corner. If you're a hyper, you have an opinion to rely on to carry it, but better not. Unless you really have, now let's say, so if you have little kids, you go, oh, Shlomi, would you like to play with this button? Oh yeah, great. They tell them pick it up, and you use it and play with it. But if you're an adult without little kids, it's not like you have a great use and better not to, therefore only kick it to the side. Aha, but that is for the Ashkenazim. What about the Sfaradim? So now we go to the Yalkut Yosef, that we'll quote from Rav Avadia Yosef. He says, look at this. Kaftor shenafel me'abeged b'Shabbos, the button falls from the garment Shabbos, ein lo din muktzah, no muktzah at all. Umutter l'taltalo, and you may carry it.
What's the reason?
Okay, and I guess he's okay, but v'machmir tavo alav bracha. But when he wants to be strict, a blessing could be on him. Okay, so again, he says, so according to the letter of the law, you don't have to do it. And then he says, "V'kafter chadash." What about a brand new button you never put onto your shirt? It's sitting in the sewing case. A brand new button, he says, "Harei muktzah." That's for sure muktzah. That's for sure muktzah. So he's saying, so he's the most lenient opinion. He's saying it's mamish not muktzah at all. If you want to be machmir, you can. If you don't want to be machmir, it's not a problem. Then he just in the bracket says a really interesting thing. What about a pearl necklace?
Case can't
and
touch
it breaks and 30 pearls fall over the floor.
Oh, wait a minute. They can pick up valuables.
וכן שרשרת חרוזים שנכנס בשבס והחרוזים נשרס בפינות הבית, and the pearls are going all over the house. מותר ללקטם, you can pick them up.
Keys.
only
Keys.
use it
You can
up.
pick
No,
up keys.
the pearls, a necklace. It's got a bunch of little,
Well,
Yes, yes.
and now it breaks. And they're,
Whatever it is.
So if
and they're
you-
all over the place.
so if my Ashkenazi wife comes into your household, her pearls go out. They're yours.
So yeah, so therefore, it's always good to have a Sephardi in your house on Shabbos. Okay? Always good to have it on Shabbos. Okay, so now we've dealt with the buttons. Okay? So we got different opinions. Basically, if you're an Ashkenazi, better not to move it,
No problem.
but you can always move it with your foot. You can always give it to your kid if he wants to play with it. The Sephardi basically saying you can, because they're not concerned with those other opinions. It has to have another use. Since it's just going to come back, they don't worry about those other opinions. Okay, now what about the shirt where you lose all the buttons? All the buttons of your suit or coat, right? So now, and let's say the garment is not wearable. Okay, without, let's say a winter coat without any buttons, it's not going to help you very much. So you might think since it's not wearable, you can't use it. But let's look in source number 70 from the Megillah Sefer from Rav Oriel Eisenthal. He says, "Ulagabe chulza shenisha b'meder kaftor." If you, okay, we'll skip that. He's all in kasha lilbosh also koroi. If it's very hard to wear this coat properly, l'chura yesh lesser satilta chulza, where we think you shouldn't wear it. Shema yid for b'razakafta. You may sew the button on.
Huh?
If it's not usable, you might sew the button on, and maybe the whole thing should be muktze. It says ladina ner lahatir, but he says he'd be lenient. Remember, we quoted if it needs a professional job, no one ever do a professional job. And therefore, he says, therefore, if it needs such a professional job, all the buttons are gone. That's a big job. Since the big job, it would not be muktze, and neither would the buttons be. Okay, now let's go to the watch. Let's go to the watch. And we're going to see again from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Aval Sha'on She'ena Poel, a watch that does not work. Beinim Namod Machmas Kilko, whether it stops because it's broken. Beinim Namod Ibnei Shasolola Shalol. Hisrok, I think it means the battery died,
Yeah.
It's modern Hebrew, it's a little tricky for me. Oh, Shon Machoni Shalom Kino. So I guess the what do you call it? The electric watch wasn't prepared properly, whatever. What does it matter? It's broken. Yeshbo Shemukza ve'oser letaltalo. He says it's muktzah and you can't carry it because it's like the broken shards that have no use. He says it's absolutely muktzah. You can't use a watch for anything else. A broken watch has no use.
But suppose if you're wearing it, it was working. You
It was
wore
what?
back, When you wore it and came on Shabbat, it was working. But afterwards it broke.
Okay,
So
so
it is on my hand. Why should I'll take it back home?
okay, so again, if you're in shul and you're afraid you're going to put it down, you're going to lose it, and you don't have to take it off. But
No, I
when
won't take it out at all.
okay, but when you're home already, you should take it off because you don't need it
No,
anymore,
you should,
right?
should take it off.
So you shouldn't keep it on because it is muktzah. It's like a broken shard. Has no. You don't. Did you ever use a watch for anything besides telling time?
No.
Ever?
Oh, I sometimes take the light, reflect it in my child's face just to drive him
No,
insane.
but I'm saying that there's no use for it. Now, here though, but you did say something correct also. Baram showing us a ketachit, but if it is an ornamental thing, to go and show a gold watch, and if normally in Karagala in a Masir Miyara Gamazasha, and you don't take it off even when it doesn't work, Hareo ketachit, that is an ornament. You may carry it even though it is not moving. Okay, so the watch issue is taken care of. Yes?
I have an antique watch that came from my father. It's one of those wind-up watches.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's no electricity, I've always wondered, Can I wind up that?
Not on Shabbos.
Not on Shabbos?
Not on Shabbos, 'cause you're repairing it.
And if it's stopped on Shabbos, then you're gonna have the other problem.
Now,
too.
again, if it's an antique watch and it's fancy, that could be jewelry already,
That is true.
so then you're okay. Then you're okay. Okay, let's get to the door handle. All right, the door handle falls off on Shabbos. So let's see what Reb Shlomo Zalman has to say over here. Oh, this we don't have a, 1 second. The next one's 72, so it's outside. So Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says that just like we learned with the broken bench, it could be Muktze. Maybe you're going to forcibly insert it into the bench. So the same thing with the door handle, you'd think should be Muktze, lest you're going to reattach it to the door, which would be a problem, especially your door is connected to a house. And that means a house is a solid thing to the ground. That's where there is building that's not allowed. So it would appear that it's not allowed to be done. For all these things, because it's never considered a kli. So therefore, that would be a problem. However, even though you can't do that, but let's see what else. So that's what he says over in 72. The handle of the door fell off. Remember there, if you're building, that's a biblical prohibition. It's not a utensil, a door. It's part of the house. Also, you can't put it back. You couldn't even carry it. Because since you can't put it in, there's no use for it at all. And the only use would be to repair it like the stove. This would be a problem. Okay. Now, what about if it's kind of a door handle that goes in and out? You know, it's in, out, in, out. You connect it, disconnect it, disconnect it. So you put the handle in as you need it and as you don't. I don't know what kind of handle is that. You know what it is? Like, you know, by the windows? The windows, those things you put in and out, that would be a good example. So that wouldn't be Muktze. Okay. Now, interesting, he says, what about, okay, so the handle is not good. The handle's Muktze, so I can't fix it. What about a screwdriver? Can I use a screwdriver as the handle?
Alternate use.
Can I take, let's say the screwdriver just happens to fit right into the door, and I can open the door with the screwdriver in it.
Yes.
The screwdriver is what status? What do we call it? What kind of kli is it? Kli shemalachto le'isser. Can carry it for what? L'tzarech gufo, for a permitted act. So all I'm doing is opening the door with it. And I'm certainly not attaching it permanently. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to repair the door. So therefore, that is allowed with a, what do you call it? With a screwdriver. Okay, we're going to have to stop it here. We almost made it all. So we still have to do the classes, but now think on your own with the principles we've learned. Glasses and the stroller. Those are the only two we didn't get to. And Baruch Hashem, we accomplished a lot today. All right. Excellent. Shkayat, guys.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right. Amazing.
Rabbi, you'll be sending us printouts on all-
Yes, going to print out of everything tonight.
And, oh, wait. Glasses would require repair